Most recently, I have taken on the project of the Star Child skull. It's a complicated case. It's a big case because the skull has been out there for 16 years under the direction and lead investigation of Lloyd Pye. After his unfortunate passing, it's been 2 years since anything has been done with the skull. The original owner, Melanie Young, has asked me to reopen this case and to take a fresh look at the data and see where we can go with it. My favorite thing about this is being an independent investigator and looking at this case completely brand new. What I've decided to do is to respectfully archive Lloyd's work for two reasons. One, it's his. I don't want to hijack any of Lloyd's great work and his mindset and direction. That will stand on its own. However, in my investigation, I have a different tactic. Basically, it's a very forensic-minded, very scientific-based investigation, but it's also keeping this part of the reopening of it completely independent also lends credibility to the scientific method, which is to retest. So everything will have brand new samples, everything will have brand new experts. And at this point, we're just going to let the skull speak for itself. We're going to let the scientists make the conclusions. I'm not personally going to make a proclamation or a conclusion at the end of the case. I really believe that science is going to answer the question this time. Tens of thousands of people all over the world. This is a global interest in this little skull that is truly one of a kind. And for that reason alone, people are continually writing, asking for more information about the skull. Where is it going? What's going to happen to it since Lloyd's passing? So I hope they're happy that the research is going to continue and continue with the highest respect to Lloyd Pye and his work, that we're going to leave it alone. We're going to let Lloyd have that. So I hope that the public's really going to like our new direction and understand the process and why we're taking it in this specific type direction. How this project came to me, or the investigation request, I was speaking at another conference, and at the Q&A part of it, one of the members or attendees came up and asked me what I thought the definitive proof was and what would be the smoking gun. And of course I said DNA. And it wasn't too long that I see this lady come running down the aisle, literally running, very excited, couldn't wait to get to the mic. There was a couple other questions before her, and when it came to her, she was very excited to tell me that she had the DNA and would like to speak to me after. And of course, this is the original owner, Melanie Young, of the Star Child. And she hadn't shown up to this conference thinking that they were going to reopen, but I guess after my talk, it inspired her to make a decision, and she made it at that moment. Yeah, the first steps we wanted to take in the investigation, because the skull, one of the things that is indisputable is that it is 900 years old. So my thinking on this was to bring it to the people that actually study and are accredited experts on ancient cultures and ancient peoples. So I contacted paleontologists, anthropologists, museums that kept ancient remains such as mastodons. And so we took a trek down to Mount Blanco Museum in Crosbyton, Texas, and had a few experts come in and discuss the skull. We had one of the nation's, probably one of the most prominent paleontologists come in, which is, the credentials have to be high. This is a one-of-a-kind skull. It is truly one of a kind in the whole world. There's never been another skull discovered that have this type of observable differences from a normal human skull. So everything we do has to be not only above board, but top-notch. After we studied through a paleontologist's point of view, which he took calipers, that we did measurements, a lot of photographs, of course, casting a skull for the public. This tens of thousands of people love this skull. So we wanted to make it available for people that wanted to own a copy of it, which, much like the Paracas elongated skulls, you can purchase copies of them, museum quality copies. So we wanted to do this for the public as well. And there's a huge affection all over the world for this skull. So our next step was absolutely going to one-of-a-kind museum. There's only 2 of these in the world. It's called an osteology museum, and it's located in Oklahoma City. And this museum is incredible. And we had several members of the staff take us into the back room. And this is where we had the bone specialists. The osteologists, they specialize in skulls, bone, and skeletons, most notably articulated skulls. So they completely understand everything there is to know about bone. Being with them was a remarkable coup, because what I didn't realize was how many comparison samples. This skull has been called a monkey, a dog, a mole, the most almost seemingly ridiculous explanations. And all the comparisons were in this museum, including the alleged age of the skull is 5 years old. It's alleged, it's not confirmed. So we had plenty of normal samples and even some abnormal samples of 5-year-old skulls. It was amazing comparison. But we also had primates and mammals and all sorts of other comparison samples that we could add there. So, and some of the other skulls that he pulled out were Down syndrome, hydrocephalic. He did not have a replica, or not a replica, or he didn't have an actual skull of that at the time. But this is where we had our largest sample base, and we needed that. We needed to start. So that's really where we began the investigation, is going back, understanding that the skull at the age of 900 years old, we needed people who understand the cultures and the properties of ancient peoples. The things that I'm looking at going forward is definitely taking the Star Child, hopefully, to conclusion. Melanie Young, one of her goals is to solve the mystery of the Star Child skull and to put it at rest in the most appropriate place possible. And I want to help her with this. To solve this mystery could mean everything from medical science and testing. It could mean a new species. There's a lot of possibilities coming out of the skull. Some of the other projects I'm working on is still working a lot with normal cases, UFO cases, obviously. I'll never give those up. So really heavily embedded in that right now. We have a lot of open cases with that. And the other things that are on my desk right now, and something I'm thoroughly enjoying, is the international investigations. And there's a lot of cases opening and coming to us from Cuba now that relationships are open. And of course, my heart's always going to be in South America, Mexico. A lot of opportunities coming forward to investigate completely, start new relationships with other countries that haven't had that bridge, or they don't have our knowledge either. So I think it's just a huge opportunity. I'm really looking forward to doing more in Cuba and meeting the ufologists down there. The politics are completely different being in a communist country. The ufologists that have been working there have to work in secret, because you're not allowed to gather in a group under the communism currently in Cuba unless you register the group and are approved to do so. And of course, when they tried to register, UFOs weren't in the radar. So this group has really been trying to do the work very secretly. So now that things have changed and relationships are open, we're hoping to help them with that, to go down there and help them with even supplies. I thought it was great when we asked them what we could do here in the States as ufologists. What's the first thing we could do to help them? And they actually asked for paper and pencils. And I thought, out of all the equipment, an investigator, that's our bread and butter. That is the one thing you don't leave a home without, and yet they could use help with that. So there's, I think, challenging but amazing work that's going to come out of Cuba. And I can't wait to hear some of the UFO events, because Cuba is a hot spot. That much we do know.